The CMO Confidential podcast is a proud member of the I Hear Everything podcast network. Looking to launch or scale your podcast? I Hear Everything delivers podcast production, growth, and monetization solutions that transform your words into profit. Ready to give your brand a voice? Then visit iheareverything.com.
Welcome to CMO Confidential, the podcast that takes you inside the drama, decisions, and choices that go with being the head of marketing. Hosted by five-time CMO Mike Linden.
Welcome, marketers, advertisers, and those who love them to Chief Marketing Officer Confidential. CMO Confidential is a program that takes you inside the drama, the decisions, and the politics that go with being the head of marketing at any company in what is one of the most scrutinized jobs in the executive suite. I'm Mike Linden, the former Chief Marketing Officer of Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry.com. I'm here today with my guest, Gabrielle Kessler. Today's topic, a primer on experiential marketing. Now, Gabrielle is the SVP of Brand Experience and Production at We Are Social and Narrative, which is a super long title for a company, and the former VP of Client Solutions at Future. Now, We Are Social is the world's largest socially led creative agency. And today we are going to take a deep dive into experiential marketing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. Let's start with the basics. Tell our listeners, give everybody just a quick overview of experiential marketing so we all know exactly what it means.
Yes, great question. So I think many of your listeners probably think of it when they think of experiential marketing, they think of events, activations, maybe trade shows, things of that nature. But experiential marketing is actually a bigger approach to marketing and not just those individual tactics. So being experientially minded means believing that that value lies in the feeling of or a memory created by an experience itself. Oftentimes that can be immersive, it can be very consumer or customer focused, but the idea is that if you want to make a lasting impression on about your brand or a place or a person in some cases, doing that through emotion that's driven by experience is the most effective way to do that. So on the macro level, we see that all over the place. You see this trend now in dining, in when you go to a hotel where they have programming and activations happening. We see it in retail where more and more, and this is probably starting, it's about 10 years old or so, where.
And can I just interrupt and say, when does experiential marketing stop and other marketing start? Like if I'm looking at like any advertisements or search or anything else, there's the line between the two. And then we can go right back to what it is. But
yeah, so it's really a framework or a way of thinking. So one can approach all of your channel mix or your marketing mix from an experiential perspective. So to answer your question, it doesn't really stop. There are, for example, I think you had recently the Warby Parker guys on that case study, right? Just the act including the at-home try-on, and then later the virtual try-on, that's experiential marketing. So really, when best used, you are putting this lens through everything that you're doing. But I think most of our conversation are going to be about tactics that are so on the nose in terms of immersive and brand building experiences, that's really what most CMOs or marketers are going to be categorizing as experiential marketing, whether or not they are taking this wide approach to all of the other channels that they have.
I love that you used on the nose in reference to the Warby Parker case. Is a way to summarize this. The consumer has to be involved in it in some way versus it coming to the consumer. I mean, there's a whole construct, but when I get to the experience thing, I have to participate, right?
Yes, it needs to be active versus passive. So it would be very difficult to have a broadcast media campaign that is experiential because the nature of that is passive. However, if you recall the bouncing QR code
Yes.
at the Super Bowl, like that could be considered looking at broadcast media experientially.
Yes, because I got to put up my phone to go record that. So,
Right.
okay. Wait, when you look at this and you guys have the catbird seat on it, um, how much marketing goes into experiential versus the other part? I know you're going to say it's growing because it surely is, but how much is it in there? Like, what percent of marketing budgets are in play here?
Well, I think it really depends because experiential marketing for the most part is going to be used for brand building, particularly for B2C B2C marketing tactics. It can be used for B2B as well. That gets more into that trade show sampling,
Yeah.
direct to consumer sort of thing. And so the mix is a little bit different there. I don't have an exact figure because I think that different companies call experiential marketing or bucket experiential marketing into different areas. But what I can tell you is that Adweek just published an article on the fastest growing job titles within brands in 2024. And senior event manager, which oftentimes is who is in charge of experiential tactics, was up, I believe, over 90% from 23 to 24. So
Well,
brands are investing in this role and this area.
and we also know that as AI takes more search off the table, you got to find another way to do it. So one of our other shows, someone was basically talking about you're going to care a lot about the top of the funnel and the experiential part of the funnel because a lot of
Yes.
the middle of the funnel might be eliminated. Uh,
Yes, and I do want to say that experiential marketers are actually really excited about more data and using that data smarter because one of the best ways to create a really impactful experience is to personalize it to the people who are there. So the more connection we have from data and customer information to what that experience is, the more special it is, the more brand love you build, the more eventual action and hopefully purchase for whatever that is you get.
so let's talk about how this fits with all the other marketing tools. And if you have any example you can bring in, that'd be great. Like, so you obviously you get the consumer and now you can have this experience with them. How do you tie this all up in your marketing program? And then how do you measure it? That's a huge question. So you can take it any way you want.
Yeah, no problem. So I think that what I see is that a lot of marketers, because it feels very specialized, because it feels um, very creatively driven, freak out a little bit on how to plan these things. And I always say, let's go back to basics. So I'm glad you set this conversation up about, going to the basics of experiential marketing. Really, we have to approach this in the same way that we would any other channel. So we need to, one, understand who our audience is, really, really know what their passions are, what are their motivations, and then figuring out what kind of experiences will resonate with them in that emotional way. And then before you even decide if experiential marketing is for you in one of these like tried and true tactics that we're talking about, not in the macro sense, you have to understand what your objectives are. So, are you trying to drive brand awareness? Is this about lead generation? Is this about product trial? Is this really about social engagement? Understanding what you as a brand are trying to do first and foremost is going to dictate the type of experience and where it shows up, as opposed to the tail wagging the dog, which is unfortunately because it's a very buzzy
Yeah.
topics, really what we see a lot of the time. Do you remember back in the day before social was just part of everybody's
Sadly,
uh,
I do.
yeah, same. And how we used to have people, brands call us up and be like, we need a Facebook. We don't know why, we don't know how, but we need a Facebook. Can you help us make a Facebook? We're kind of in that stage with experiential marketing right now where they're like, I need to do I saw Game of Thrones was on the Empire State Building and I need to throw a dragon somewhere. And we're like, okay, let's step back and say, what are we really trying to do here? And then create the tactic that's going to be most effective for that.
So the Game of Thrones on the Empire State Building with the dragon, that was pretty cool. What other brands have done stuff like that that you would call out? And then, I get the measuring this. Some of these are harder to measure than others. What do
Yes.
you give us some examples, and then what recommend people do when they're trying to say this worked or it didn't work?
So first, I really have to bang the drum of that experiential tactics need to be in an integrated marketing approach. So just having a standalone stunt or activation doesn't really work. It needs to be combined with all of the marketing efforts, digital, social, PR. And so, that Game of Thrones example, I like when I'm not shamelessly plugging our own work, which I will do in a second. Um, is a really great example because yes, everybody talks about the dragon that's on the Empire State Building, but they had multi-million-dollar buys, on social, on digital. They took over 2 stadiums. They had broadcast that was running. So they had massive experiences built just for PR to then talk about the experience that they built. So that's what I mean by an integrated approach. So when it comes to measurement, if you are using all of those channels, you can use the traditional measurement measures for those channels. But then what we're sort of talk about an elevated or a modernized PR measurement. It used to be, it's very much about earned, right? Earned
Right.
conversation,
Yeah.
sentiment. It used to be that, PR would just be like, here's the potential number of impressions that we hit with all of this coverage, and they threw one big inaccurate number. We now have the ability to really drill down on that and say, okay, what impact did you make on the people who witnessed this and were engaged in this tactic, as opposed to just how many people saw it? So, um, again, what that impact is going to be really unique to the brand. Is it sentiment? Is it loyalty, things of that nature? But really, we're trying to get to that level of metric alongside with just purely how many people saw this.
Right. Okay, that's good. And is this often an amplifier versus the prime part of the marketing plan? Is that a way to look at it?
Yes, I would say so. Absolutely. Particularly if the brand is one has a demo or a market segment that really requires this level of emotional engagement. So we're talking about young millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha audiences who are ad blind. They
Yeah.
really are. They need to feel and experience something in order to care. And several a bunch of studies have come out about this. One quote that I'm remembering says that um particularly Gen Z wants to live in the world of the brands that they love. So if you're trying to reach those audiences, this is a really wonderful additive tool to your standard mix in order to make it a lasting impact with them.
So let's flip over to we got a lot of marketers obviously listening to the show. What type of brands are ideal for experiential marketing and which aren't so wired for it?
So I think that, like I was just saying, any brand that is trying to hit a Gen Z or a younger demo really needs to consider this tactic, even if it's at a small scale, because it is a mandatory for those
So it's the only way to
consumers.
reach a lot of these. What I hear you saying is I can't reach them hardly any other way. So this is my best path to get them.
Yes, and I would say this goes hand in hand with influencer marketing and create well, what we now call creator marketing. Influencers get very offended if you call them influencers now.
I
Um,
never say that to another.
they never say that to their face. Yes. So it really goes hand in hand because we also have hit peak creator marketing where now even younger generations are blind to a lot of the sponsored content and creator content that is being made. So a lot of times, particularly if you are a smaller brand and budget is a concern, Experiential does double duty. It gives your creators a place and a way to make something that's unique. And it also gives your consumers and audience a way to interact. And if done right, your physical experience can still be interacted with by people at home. And that's the sweet spot for making the most out of one tactic.
Hey, so we talked about Game of Thrones, and I also know Handmaid's Tale had a bunch of takeovers. That really got a lot of things working for them a while ago. Any good live examples of small companies that have used experiential marketing to break through?
Yeah. So, one example we like to quote all the time is do you know Haley Bieber? She's Justin Bieber's wife, and
Sadly, I
she
do know that.
okay. She's a celebrity, but I mean her company. Well, maybe now it is, but when they launched this, wasn't huge. So Rhode is a lip gloss a lip gloss line. Nothing massive special. It's like a single product, or at the time, a single product brand. And they created a photo booth. Literally all it was, just a photo booth that went from place to place. But because they tapped into an element of culture where this sounds silly to say, but photo booths are having a moment, creating content, creating content that
I
way
always learn something on this show from my guests. Now I realize photo booths are in. I'm gonna
for
call
late.
my producer and get one installed.
There you go. For I mean, if you're trying to hit the 18 to 24-year-old female population, that's get yourself a photo booth. But it was so perfect for what her demo was looking for, that for pretty minimal investment and popping up at different places. And yes, the fact that she's a celebrity name helps, but she had nothing to do with the activation itself other than it was her company. Massively took off and kind of flooded the feed in terms of social content that came out of this. And so they got more out of that physical execution than they could have gotten out of any buy, to be frank.
So let's look at the flip side, because a lot of times you're sitting in a marketing seat and someone comes in and says, "Look at this photo booth lip gloss thing. Why can't we do
Mhm.
that? Let's do something like that." And then the marketer runs off and does something like that. How do you know if it's going to be if it might be a bad idea for you when your experiential is likely to fail?
Well, first, I would say if you are starting with tactic and not with intention and objective, you're already off on the wrong foot. If you are going to ask your staff or your agency or whatever to reverse engineer justification into a tactic just because you like the tactic, it's probably jumped the shark already. Like the number of conversations I've had about like, we need to make a Barbie moment. We need to, that
Right.
happened too.
Like I could just go to the store and get a Barbie moment for my brand. Uh,
Right. So you, I would say, please take pause and ask yourself, am I coming at this from the right way? If that's where you're starting. Um, but, but other questions are, what are basics? What are the specific marketing objectives? Who is the target audience? Does that tactic fit with who your target audience is and will it resonate with them? What's your budget and what kind of ROI are you expecting? These tactics, like you said, are best used
well,
when
people fall in
additive.
love with the tactic and then they want you to do it. But a lot of times your brand shouldn't even do it. And the tactic doesn't fit the strategy, which is a huge mistake, but we see that happen a lot. What
Yeah.
other mistakes do marketers make in this space?
Unrealistic expectations of what you can get out of this tactic. So, uh, if you want to create an emotional connection with your audience and you're using experiential to do that, expecting them to buy your product in that moment is not really understanding the normal pace of how a consumer relation to a brand and cycle kind of works. If really you're trying to create, there are a few rare exceptions, like if you're in apparel and you're creating a limited edition something and you have an event for that, like, yes, it's perfectly valid to say at the end of this, we should be sold out of the limited
Yeah.
run that we did. Great. But generally, if you're selling lawnmowers and you want to have an event to make, I'm just going to call out John Deere and to say that this is a real John Deere thing. But if you want to make America love John Deere and you create an experience for that, to expect that they're going to go out and buy a lawnmower, or if you're an auto brand, to expect that people are walking out beyond the hand raiser phase beyond consideration into purchase, that's unrealistic and probably not the right tactic for you. You probably need to go lower funnel if you're looking for that kind of conversion.
So you see brands do a lot of this Hall of Fame worst practices all the time by just trying to shortcut everything with one event. Actually, probably a lot, don't you?
I will say I think that there's that call from the top that says our CMO saw this, we need to do this, does
Well,
happen frequently. I would say that most of the time, people are actually really good though, or brands are really good when we present alternate ideas that stick to or alternate tactics that stick to the same kernel of what they want to do. So we can demonstrate that you can actually move the needle more and get there better through a social campaign that sure might have one or two IRL elements to help with that. Usually, look, the argument for digital isn't hard to make, right? The return on money invested is a lot better, being truthful. So
well, you can see it too. It's right there. So,
right. So we're really well positioned because we do it all. We're not a production company, or we don't just do events or things of that nature. So like we actually can go and come back and say, we love your idea. Here's a far more efficient way to do this. And that oftentimes is agreeable. And then it opens the door for, once we have that trust in there, they go, okay, now that we've seen this, how do we layer that experiential piece back on top of it? And we're like, okay, now we're cooking with gas. Let's see what we can do.
and this should be a lesson for all the marketers out there too. Don't look around and grab a tactic and jam it into your strategic plan unless it really fits, and don't jump the shark on the whole thing. Um, so you talked earlier about AI and that this is great for experiential marketers because it allows you to more personalize stuff. Any other big impact for AI in your business that you see?
Oh, yes. So AI is incredibly exciting on the creative technology front. So much of what helps us get that earned value in experiential, especially some of the bigger programs, are the novelty of the technology that we're using in the experience or how to get to the experience. So we're on to the shameless plug time. For example, we did a program last year with our client Adidas for the Super Bowl. And Adidas did not spend a single dollar in traditional media for the Super Bowl. But instead, we used technology to help us create the first of its kind out of home placement on the Sphere in Las Vegas that actually utilized baby Patrick Mahomes, teenage Patrick Mahomes, adult Patrick Mahomes into this animation that was also the first anamorphic effect that ever happened on the Sphere itself, and it got more buzz than any of the paid placements in that category. So, yes, it's incredibly helpful in having us make groundbreaking work in breakneck speed that gets talked about.
So we've done over 100 shows. You are the first person to use the word anamorphic. So I think that's
All
awesome.
right.
The, pre-show, we were talking a little about some examples, and you said you had one regarding for Elon Musk. And so I
Yeah.
must ask this question.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, you do ask in the pre-interview to talk about some examples of things that don't work. And I want to work with every brand. So, I would hate to throw
So
any
do
brand under
we.
the bus. I have had the benefit of, I am familiar with Elon's companies and events from the past, so I feel comfortable talking about this. I will say that the biggest sort of like dope slap moment for me experientially in 2024 was his Tesla robot launch. Um,
Right.
yeah. So, one just as a producer, right? I looked at. I don't know if you saw footage of this, but
Yes.
the robots themselves, it was all faked, right? The robots were doing things that that the product doesn't actually do. And the attention to detail and how that was executed was laughable. So they essentially used them as puppets and they had, I don't know, some out of work actors, I guess, that with a camera and a microphone just ad-libbing in the back. And the interactions were just not how you'd want to represent your brand. So like I've done a lot of work in animatronics and puppetry. E- Elon, next time call me back. I'll call my buddies at the Henson Creature Shop and we'll do this right. But essentially they could have just waved a flag and said that this product doesn't do what we say it does. And that's a failure because that then becomes the messaging that people are taking out of this event as opposed to, oh my God, what an incredible novel product. This company is on the cutting edge of technology.
So I think we're almost at time, which brings us to our traditional last question. It's a two-parter. You have to pick one or both. The first is funniest story you can tell on the air and or practical advice for our listeners we haven't discussed yet. Your pick or both.
Funniest story I can tell on the air. Well, okay. This one's sort of topical because he's been in the news lately. But several years ago, I got to work with the fabulous people at Fox on Deadpool 2's home entertainment release, which perfectly coincided with Comic-Con at the time. Comic-Con is like one of those Super Bowls for experiential
Oh yeah,
marketing.
sadly I've been there. I've been to
You're still trying to get the smell off you, right?
yes.
Um, so that year it was a great pitch experience where we went in with several really off the wall ideas. And it was the wackiest one that we pitched in the room. And it was like almost like a Hollywood scene where everybody stopped and they went and whispered to each other and said, I teed it up. I was like, you're never going to buy this, but I'm in the room with you. So I have to share it with you. And then they were like, that one, that's the one that we want. It was a truly bizarre and like a demonic sort of execution. But the best part was we had toilet seat covers with Ryan Reynolds' face on them, where you literally would, do your business on his face. And people were stealing those by the handful from the convention center and selling them on eBay for $350 a piece. So
Wow.
yeah. And he came up to, me and my team and said, thank you. You've made all of my really disturbing dreams come true. And that was a really special moment, considering how bizarre everything that we did was.
Okay, well, that is also the first toilet story ever told on air for CMO Confidential. So you're really knocking it out of the park here.
Great.
Any practical advice or with that, it's hard really to top that story. So we
Um, yeah, I think I don't get scared. Don't get scared by experiential marketing. It's rooted in the same things that your audience knows how to do. It just has a different output. And when you should be consulting experts if you want to do this, but make sure that your experts also don't have a vested interest in just doing one tactic, that your experts are really thinking about your business objectives on the whole and can help you navigate through that process to get to what's going to best serve you.
Thank you. A great way to end the show. Thank you, Gabrielle, and thanks to everyone for listening to CMO Confidential. Look for more of our shows on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and the I Hear Everything Network, which include It's a Bird, It's a Plane, Holy Shit, It's AI, parts 1 and 2, Is Your Next Best Customer an AI Bot, the top 5 mistakes CEOs and boards make when hiring a CMO, and synthetic influencers. Should brands do it themselves? Hey, all you marketers, stay safe out there. This is Mike Linden signing off for CMO Confidential.